There's a lot of uncertainty, right? And they want the peace of mind by saying, here's the crystal ball of what's going to happen in the future. And we don't have access to that. That illusion of the abundance of certainty is very real. And that is a byproduct of that psychological reconditioning in the information age. But we are moving out of the information age into the imagination age. That's what experts are calling it. The new global economy is not based on understanding how everything works or even knowledge, because AI can think faster than we can. It's based on wisdom and wonder and doing what makes us uniquely human.
I'm Larry Sprung, your host for the Mitlin Money Mindset and founder and wealth advisor of Mitlin Financial. Today, we're honored to have a guest who has mastered the art of storytelling and creative transformation. Harris III, founder and managing partner of Istoria. Harris is a world-renowned speaker, author, and entrepreneur whose journey is nothing short of extraordinary. Starting his career as an illusionist, he captivated audiences around the globe with his magic. But his path didn't stop there. Harris transitioned his talents into becoming a storyteller and creative strategist, using his unique perspective to inspire individuals and organizations to unlock their full potential. As the founder of Istoria, Harris leads a team that helps companies and leaders craft compelling narratives that drive growth, foster connection, and spark innovation. His ability to bridge the worlds of creativity and business has made him a sought-after voice for those looking to reimagine their purpose and impact. Today, we'll explore Harris's fascinating journey, his work at Istoria, and how storytelling can be a powerful tool for success in business and life. Get ready for an engaging and inspiring conversation with Harris III. Well, I am super excited today to have Harris III, the founder and managing partner of Istoria. Welcome to the show, Harris.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And, one of the things that our listeners really enjoy is hearing the entrepreneurial journey, because I think although there are a lot of similarities, there's also a lot of differences in there. So, we'll talk a lot about what you're doing today and what you're doing at Istoria. But before we dive into that, can you share with our audience a little bit about, your background, how you got to where you are today, Harris?
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. My entrepreneurial journey started at the age of 11. That's the first time I got paid. When I was 9, 2 years before that, I got a magic kit for Christmas from my grandmother. Just this little box of magic tricks, like a magic set. Not at all what I asked for Christmas that year, but got bored a couple days after Christmas and went to my room, learned my first trick. I thought, this is dumb, way too simple. No one's going to be fooled by this. I march into the living room. I'm like, Mom and Dad, gather around. Here's what Grandma got me for Christmas. Mm-hmm. And I put a little ball in a vase and made it disappear. Their eyes lit up. And that was the first time that I remember someone else looking at me with a look of awe and wonder in response to something that I had done. I'm sure there were times when I was a little kid, like, yay, he used the bathroom on a toilet instead of in a diaper or something like that. Or look, he learned how to take his first few steps. But that was the first time that I remember at that age, someone being like, whoa, I'm impressed. And I was just getting bullied and picked on for being awful at everything at school. And so that sense of wonder in response to something that I had done, it gave me permission to believe in a whole new story filled with possibility. And so it took 2 years, but finally got paid $25 to do my first magic show. If we fast forward from there, a few milestones, I remember my parents sitting me down at tax time when April rolled around when I was 14 and explained that I'd made 6 figures that year. That was more money than they had ever made in 2 years combined at their minimum wage jobs. By 16, I had dropped out of public school to go on the road full time to tour professionally. By 18, I started touring internationally, was already performing in private events and cruise ships and now doing international tours. And by 21, I'd made $1 million doing magic shows. And that sounds pretty cool until you hear that I went bankrupt by 22. But that's the answer to your question. That was how my entrepreneurial journey began. I was a professional magician touring around the world doing magic shows and had a chance to do magic for over 2 million people in over 40 countries on all 6 continents that people live in. It was pretty crazy.
Amazing. Amazing. So instead of getting underwear and socks, you got a magic trick.
I'm sure I got the underwear and socks too, but I remember the magic tricks the most.
Yeah. And I mean, Did you have any kind of inclination prior to getting that magic trick that you had this passion for magic, or was that really the starting point that you got this trick, you really, leaned into learning and you were like, "Wow, people are watching me, I can do this," and you kind of just took it from there?
Yeah, when I say I wasn't good at anything else, I really wasn't good at anything else, and I didn't ask for a magic kit for Christmas. I didn't express an interest in magic. I actually remember there was a magician that came to my school in elementary school in my tiny little town. He did like a cowboy themed magic show, and I mean it was cool. I remember buying like a color changing sucker at the end as like red, and then when you start sucking on it, put it in your mouth, it changes blue or something
Right,
like that. But there was no like, oh, I want to be a magician someday. So I don't know why my grandmother picked up that gift. Sometimes it messes with your head if you think about it, but I'm like, she didn't go to a magic store to buy that. She probably bought it at like a Walmart or something, right?
right,
So she's walking through Walmart in the toy section. How big is the magic trick section at Walmart? Not very big. And so you
right.
think she just could have reached one shelf up or one shelf down or a few products to the right or to the left or just skipped that aisle and gone to the next aisle. And I wouldn't have gotten that magic kit. And that magic kit changed the entire trajectory of my life. And now, as a creative entrepreneur, I've built a few different seven-figure brands, and I may not be performing professionally only as a magician these days. My career as an entrepreneur has taken on other forms, but every single thing that I do and touch is absolutely informed by that perspective of spending a couple decades touring as a professional magician. It's just a part of who I am. And I certainly would not be doing the things I'm doing today without it. So it's fun to think about.
It sounds like nurture rather than nature really had a lot of impact here.
For sure, yeah. I think with everything, it's probably a little bit of both, right? I mean, there's probably some natural gifting that I have with people and being on stage, and that might have been a part of who I was. But yeah, some nurturing as well.
Amazing. And grandma's intuition must have came into play, I guess.
Never doubt it. Never doubt it.
There you go. So, you kind of glossed over this just a moment ago about, making $1 million before you were 21 and, doing magic, and that you were bankrupt by the time you were 22. Uh, you know, there had to be some significant lessons and takeaways there. And I don't think that's a lot different. I think, if you look at entrepreneurs, there are many entrepreneurs that have had very successful ventures that became very unsuccessful very quickly.
Yeah.
And, you have no other choice other to either kind of roll up in a ball and crumble at that moment and never do it again, or learn some lessons and create some positivity like you've done from that point on. So, what were the lessons for you going, in those moments, going through those events?
Yeah, I love what you said there. I have recently been surprised by how many people share my story. I was at a conference in Austin a year or two ago with someone from our team, and the person on stage, he kind of stopped. He's like, "Wait a second, let's just do a quick audience survey," almost as if he was surprised by it. He goes, "By show of hands, how many of you?" And this is for context. This is a room full of small business owners that own businesses, probably between $2 and $5 million a year in revenue.
Okay.
And so he said to this room full of entrepreneurs, "How many of you have made it, lost it all, went bankrupt, and not necessarily had to file actual bankruptcy, but lost it all and had to start over and built back to where you are today?" Larry, I kid you not, it was over 80% of people in the room raised their hands. That surprised me, and it made me feel a little bit less alone. I was like, "Oh, I thought I was in the minority of idiots who just wasted all their money by spending it on stupid stuff and then made some really poor financial decisions." And the reality is, this is a story that a lot of us share. And so, for me, at 21, what essentially happened is I never stopped making good money. My revenue didn't change. I moved out of my little small town. I moved to the big city of Nashville, which was not that big at the time. It's getting a little bit bigger now. And I got married that year young at 21. We built a big fancy house in one of those master plan communities with the fences and the gates and the stuff. And went out and bought a couple nice expensive cars, filled our house up with cool stuff, put all that on credit cards. So again, it's not that I couldn't afford to buy all of these things. I could certainly afford to buy some of it because I had good cash flow. But I thought, why would I spend the cash if I could just finance it? And I still remember there's a guy who knocked on our door, little old school door to door salesman, knocks on our door. says, "Hey, I'm here to test your water." And I'm like, "What?" Yeah, I'm like, "Okay." So he comes in, tests our water, does a little thing where you shake it up in the little vial. I'm like, "Oh, that's disgusting." It's like, "Well, you need a water purification system and filtration system on your house. I just installed one next door. I can install yours." I'm like, "I'll go get my checkbook." He's like, "Oh, no need. We'll finance it." And like that example was a perfect glimpse into my mindset at the time. It was like, "Well, sure, I might as well just finance it." And all of that, it sounds like just poor financial choices, but it's way deeper than that. It goes back to where I found my value as a human being and like what I anchored my identity in. And so for me, if you think about my story from a young age, I was conditioned and coached by these performance coaches to be really great at entertaining people on stage. So I could walk on a stage and engage an audience for an hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours for a show, and they would clap for me. And that applause felt awesome because what that applause translated into in my mind is like, Harris, you're awesome. You're cool enough. You're finally man enough. You're talented enough. You're rich enough. Like these people like you. Right. But then I would walk off stage and I couldn't stop performing because I didn't want the applause to stop either. And so my vocation as an illusionist kind of became my lifestyle. The performing and the tricking people into liking me never ended. And as I commonly say, if you live for the approval of others, you'll end up dying by their rejection. And so it wasn't about just poor financial stewardship. It was about me wasting every penny I had trying to control the perceptions of other people so they would see me the way I felt like I needed them to see me. And if you take it an even a step even further, I don't know how deep you want to get on this podcast with your guest, but if you really peel back the layers, it just goes back to my relationship with my dad. I have core memories of walking off stage at 11 years old and my dad, instead of giving me a hug, going, "Man, son, that was amazing. I'm so proud of you." I would hear things like, "Hey, that wasn't good enough." Or, "Hey, if I were the person who booked you, I wouldn't book you again. Like that was not enough. You got to show me and everyone else that you've got what it takes." Now, I think the hard coach in him wanted me to live the life that he felt like he wasn't living, right? He put out foam that went inside of furniture at a factory for a minimum wage. And so I think he got a little glimpse of possibility in his son's life to go, "Gosh, he's good at this. He could make it at this. I just need to push him really hard." But some of those moments, I just needed my dad to say, "Hey, good job. I'm proud of you." And so it created this addiction to approval and this drive to show and prove to others that I was enough. And so the reason I built that fancy house and filled it up with cool stuff, and it wasn't just the celebrities I was hanging out with, it's so that my dad could come over and be like, "Dang, look at my son now. He's finally made it." Right.
Right.
And so that's the reason I went bankrupt. It wasn't as simple as I don't know how to manage money. It was that combined with some deep identity issues that weren't healthy. I had some broken narratives that were driving my behavior.
Yeah, well, it sounds like there were a lot of lessons in there, and
Oh, a
it
ton.
sounds like the good news is you've utilized those, and to your advantage, and leverage those in order to, live a better life and be a better person. So, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right? We all make mistakes. We all
Yeah.
have challenges, and it's just a matter of recognizing those and either using them for and going down the bad route or the good route. And it sounds like you've chose to go down the good route. So that's awesome. So congratulations for that.
Thanks.
I saw you speak a couple of months ago at a conference, and I was blown away with one story that you shared, and I think it's very poignant because we talk a lot on this show about mental health. I'm somebody who sat on on the board for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention for 15 years. I share openly that I lost my brother-in-law about 20 years ago, and you shared an experience that you had in a high school auditorium and how that transformed your life. And I was hoping you could share that short story with us today.
Sure. Yeah. I think I know which story you're referencing. First of all, I'm so sorry about the loss of your brother. That's hard.
Thank you.
And now I empathize with that more than I would have when I had this experience that you're referencing because I have a lot of dark chapters of pain in my own story from abuse in my childhood and addiction as a teenager, lots of stuff that I try to navigate, but it never led me to any form of considering self-harm. And no one else in my family ever struggled with harming themselves. And so this particular experience, I was in a high school gym in Michigan, to go back to the story I was just sharing about kind of wasting $1 million by 22 years old. that led to me going, how did this happen? Like, how did I get tricked into believing all this stuff that isn't true? And I started connecting some dots about how magic tricks work and the principles of deception that kind of make up my art form as an illusionist, and how those principles of deception are pretty universal. And I wanted more meaning, and so I'm like, gosh, what is life all about? So I'm asking all these questions, but I don't really know what to do with my life other than magic tricks. So I'm traveling around as a magician still, because that's the only way I know to make a living. And I'm asking these deeper questions about what the meaning of life is and how deception works. And so I stumble into this school in Michigan. The principal comes up, is like, "Hey, you're the magician." I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, you know how to trick people. I read about this deception thing. I'm excited for you to speak to our kids today." Man, like, I read your bio. You've had a crazy story. Like, you've been all over the world, man. These kids don't need anyone to talk at them. Just share your story with them. Like, just open up and be vulnerable and share your story. And before I could be like, whoa, 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 that's not really what I do, he just introduces me to like 1,000 teenagers sitting in the bleachers of this gym. And so I go out and do some magic tricks. And if I'm honest, I didn't really want to be there that day. We would go in and do these school assemblies because those kids would then buy tickets to come see a show in a local theater down the street that evening. And that was like the show that I was really excited to do. Right. And so I remember getting to the end of this presentation in the school. I got out of a straitjacket. It's the only thing I remember doing that day. There was other stuff I did, some other tricks, but the straitjacket isn't really a magic trick. It's just a stunt. They literally strap you inside of it and you fight your way out of it. And I remember holding up the straitjacket at the end and looking over at the principal. He was kind of leaned up against the gym wall, and he kind of gives me this like, "Come on, man! Like you've got this." And I was like, "Okay." And I didn't really know what to say. And the first thing that came to mind is how hard it was to get out of the straitjacket, and how hard it felt like my life was at that time. You see, I never actually filed bankruptcy. Instead, what I did is I started selling everything we had. We sold that house. We sold a car. We went without TV in our house for 2 years, not cable. We didn't put a TV in our house at all for 2 years. We started the process of digging out of this mountain of a few $100,000 of bad debt. And I just felt like I was in the straitjacket. I had so many straitjackets. And if you go back to my childhood and some of those darker chapters I was referencing, those felt like straitjackets. Getting bullied and struggling to make friends because you're not good at anything. That felt like straitjacket.
Mhm.
So I open up, I tell my story vulnerably for the first time, because even though I was good at communicating and telling stories, I certainly had never told my story. And then I finish, I'm like, whatever your straitjacket is, I know we all have one, whatever yours is, this has been so mine. Just please know there's always hope. Keep going. Like you've got this. And if I'm honest, it was a pretty bad talk. So people hear me tell that story sometimes and they're like, that was so cool. Like the metaphor with the straitjacket. I'm like, at the time I stumbled my way through it. I was nervous. I never get nervous in presentations because I've done thousands of them, but I remember being nervous that day and because I'd never done that before.
Yeah, you weren't really prepared for this one, in fairness, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it just felt so raw and vulnerable. So the students give me like golf clap, and the principal didn't even come over and say thank you. He just gave me a thumbs up and went back to work. My inner critic is waging war on my heart and my mind. He's like, "You idiot! You should have just stuck to the script. What were you thinking?" And then everyone leaves except for this one girl, and she's sitting up in the bleachers, and she starts walking down towards me. I'm down on the floor packing up my stuff in my case, and she starts walking up to me, and I can see she has tears running down her cheeks. And she goes, "Mr. Harris, I have something for you." And I was like, "Okay." And I just remember seeing her reach her hand into her pocket, hold it out in front of me. I didn't know what to do. And so I just cupped my hands out in front of her, and she dropped a razor blade into my hand. And she said, "That's my straitjacket, and I don't want it anymore. And you are the first person to ever make me feel like my life matters." And after that brief exchange, she walked away. And man, that experience changed me. I became obsessed with trying to understand why would someone do that to themselves? What makes human beings believe the things that we believe? What makes us do the things that we do? And it sent me down the rabbit hole, and I started researching. And what I discovered as a result of that research is what has shaped all of the work that we do at Istoria today. And so, whether it's work that we do for profit in our company or work that we do through our nonprofit foundation, it's been some of the most meaningful work of my life. And when I started pursuing meaning as a result of that experience, instead of pursuing money, not only has my life felt more complete and purpose driven, I'm so much more fulfilled. I have actually made more money today than I did back when I was pursuing nothing but money as a teenager and in my early 20s, as a result of starting with meaning first. It's been really cool.
Amazing. And wasn't there some follow-up that she followed up with you like many years later or something along those lines?
Yeah, like 10 years go by, and I posted a picture of me getting out of a straitjacket and retold that story. My book had just come out. My last book was called The Wonder Switch, and I told a little bit of that story inside that book. And so then I posted a picture to Instagram and said, "Hey, in my book, I talked about the story of this young lady dropping a razor blade into my hand." 24 hours go by, and I got a DM from a young lady, and it was her. And she basically was explaining to me, "Hey, I don't know if I'm the girl you're talking about in your most recent post, but you came to my school back on this year." She remembered the date. She had a picture, like a selfie that she took with me because she came back to the evening show and
Right.
got in the autograph line and took a picture with me, and then told me the rest of her story. So she graduated from high school. She gave me that razor blade, never picked another one up again, finished high school, went to
Amazing.
college, got her master's degree, and she's now a child and family therapist. Her name is Jessica Marie, and she is absolutely incredible. We brought her to Story Conference years later.
Imagine a relationship where financial conversations don't feel stressful, but actually bring you joy. We've designed a guide to help you have positive, meaningful money conversations with your partner. This isn't just another budgeting tool, it's a roadmap for building trust and connection. So if you're ready to start a joyful money journey with your partner, go to mitlin.us/couplesjoy and download your free guide. Transform your financial future together starting today. Amazing. Just from that one, it goes to show you never knew what kind of impact, you would have, like the whole trajectory change because that principle asked you to go out of your comfort zone and tell a story that you weren't prepared for and it impacted
Yeah.
somebody and potentially may have saved their life is amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And now that story, it's had a ripple effect. Like that story has been told so many times. And then other people ask me to tell that story. And then they tell that story of what happened to me.
Mhm.
And it transformed my work. And to think it all started because of a young lady who had the courage to come up to me and drop a razor blade into my hand. Like so much courage for her in that moment, not realizing the impact that she would have from that story being told to,
Absolutely.
at this point, hundreds of thousands of people. It's crazy.
Yeah, and who knows the ripple effect of lives that's this story is saved, right? Because they
Yeah.
feel the same way.
Stories are
Amazing.
powerful. Yeah.
You now call yourself a storyteller who does magic tricks, and this is a great story that you told us, real life example, and you became passionate about the power of the stories we tell ourselves, you
Mhm.
know, and we talk about stories all the time, especially on the show. Our listeners, they're interested in them. Why do you think the power of a story is so impactful? I mean, clearly the one you just told, there's a clear delineation there, right? You can easily see the power there. But, others may not, you may not be able to see it right then and there. But why do you think those stories are so impactful?
A few reasons. One, stories are the currency of human connection. That's a quote from Robert McKee, who's kind of considered like the godfather of storytelling in LA. He wrote what a lot of screenwriters consider to be their story Bible. It's just called story. So, stories are the currency of human connection. In a world that is increasingly divided, the shortest distance between two people is a story. So, there's something powerful that happens in that exchange of empathy and the connection that forms as a result. But also, story is the operating system of the human brain. We are story creatures. So you and I and everyone listening to us right now, even though we may not be consciously aware that this is happening inside of our mind, we walk around all day long as human beings telling ourselves stories and being told stories from others. Stories aren't just movies and books. Stories can sometimes be a single image. An architect is a storyteller, a designer who chooses a certain color. Colors tell stories. I could say the name of one person's name, like of one leader, right? And depending on what your political narrative is, or your religious narrative, or your relational narrative, the name of a parent, or the name of a politician, or the name of whoever can spur up an entire story inside your mind and shift your emotional state. So we do this so often that even when we sleep at night, our minds stay up all night long telling more stories. So if story is the operating system of the human brain, if we think and feel in story, then the most powerful stories we tell aren't just the ones that we tell throughout our days to others or the ones we exchange with other human beings, but the stories that we tell ourselves. Now, these stories form powerful narratives, and those narratives in turn drive more storytelling. And those narratives are what drive all human behavior. So, one of the things that frustrates me a bit is that story has kind of become a buzzword over the last decade. Marketers love storytelling. People who own their own businesses, we love to talk about storytelling because the science is out now about how story has the ability to hijack the human brain. It's actually not hijacking the brain. It's just you're speaking in the language that the brain already speaks because, again, it's the operating system. So if I talk to you with facts and data instead of in narrative language, it just comes with a higher cognitive load. Those facts and data are still telling a story, but you have to translate facts into narrative language to understand why that fact or data might be more relevant. And so those who tell stories are the most powerful people in the world. That's what Steve Jobs said. But now, based on what we're understanding about the science of story and narrative, it's more accurate to say that those who understand how to leverage the power of narrative, those who understand how to establish narratives and shift narratives, those are the most powerful people in the world. So, in a world that's increasingly divided, stories are the currency of human connection. And in a world that is increasingly dominated by artificial intelligence, we at Astoria think that it's actually narrative intelligence that is the ultimate capacity. So if we are going to succeed in what experts are calling the imagination age, where AI can think faster than we can, we're going to have to learn how to be um, more equipped as humans to do what only humans can do. And that is a higher level of narrative intelligence that drives a deeper understanding of story as more than just a communication tool with others.
And I think what you're alluding to or saying outright is those that find the way and are able to do that will reap the benefits of being in that position, which is great.
Yeah.
Um, you talk a lot about wonder.
hmm
You use that word, which I don't think is used very, very often these days, right? When did you first feel wonder personally?
Probably before I could remember, right? Because we feel it early on. I mean, this this is used to be like a soft woo woo. Like people would put this in the category of like, oh, sure, yeah, magic. We're babies and we're coming. But like, if you think about coming out of the womb into a world, and all of a sudden you're seeing light on your eyeballs for the first time. I mean, now based on what we understand about the science of researchers will call it a positive awe state. I think there are nuances between the emotional experience of awe and what wonder is. Wonder is also something that we can choose. We have agency over choosing wonder in situations that we may not physiologically be experiencing awe. But I would say, as babies, I mean, babies experience this consistently because magic, real magic, is the stimuli for awe, and there's magic all around us that can't be explained. But what happens in the information age is we have access to what feels like certainty. We live under the illusion of an abundance of certainty. And having access to that information psychologically reconditioned us to feel so uncomfortable with mystery and ambiguity that we have run away from wonder instead of towards it, right? So, wonder, when we feel it, feels disruptive. It humbles us. It makes us go, well, I don't know how that works. And that can be as simple as staring up at the stars in the universe or watching a magician do a magic trick. So if you watch a magic trick and you don't understand how it works, your natural tendency is to slip your hand into your pocket, pull your phone out, and Google the secret, right? As if you know what to look for. All that is your very how driven mind going, I must understand. And so no wonder we're uncomfortable with uncertainty and mystery and ambiguity. That makes us feel really uncomfortable with human beings. But 100 years ago, that was just a part of the human experience. You couldn't go to a magic show and then go home and Google all the secrets. You couldn't hold your phone up and turn on your camera and point it towards the night sky and see an augmented reality that like traced out like the different formations of the stars and tell you what they were. So you didn't have all the answers in your pocket. You just had to live in ambiguity. And so because of that psychological reconditioning, we all have access to feeling wonder and reaping the benefits of it. We just choose not to.
Right.
And that's dangerous. It's costing us a lot. I could spend the next hour giving you all the research to move this out of the woo woo and into the science. My favorite stat has nothing to do with my work day to day. I'm focused more on the mental and emotional capacity of wonder and what it can lead us to based on how it transforms our work in the stories we tell ourselves. But the hardest part of the research, and by hard, I just mean like uh, easiest to see, like, oh, this is a real thing, is that when we enter into a positive awe state, the moments that you and I as human beings go, wow, whoa, what? That's amazing. Those moments, they shift the physiology in our body, and chronic inflammation in our body goes down because in a positive awe state, our body starts producing cytokine storms. And so I'm like, if these experiences of wow literally shift what's going on inside of our physical bodies, in addition to that, they also change the story we tell ourselves because we're more curious in an awe state. And curiosity is wonder in action. There's a lot here that we should be paying attention to.
Yeah. And we don't want to ruin it by picking up the phone and Googling it, I guess, right?
Leaders are struggling with that right now. Imagine that you're struggling with that right now, even with your clients, where they're going, there's a lot of uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
And they want the peace of mind by saying, here's the crystal ball of what's going to happen in the future. And we don't have access to that. That
Yeah.
illusion of the abundance of certainty is very real. And that is a byproduct of that psychological reconditioning in the information age.
Yeah.
But we are moving out of the information age into the imagination age. That's what experts are calling it. The new global economy is not based on understanding how everything works or even knowledge, because AI can think faster than we can. It's based on wisdom and wonder and doing what makes us uniquely human. So,
Yeah.
creativity, leaning into awe and wonder, staying curious, integrating wisdom back into our life, growing in narrative intelligence, choosing to lead other humans to more interesting, exciting places in the future. That's how we future proof our work. It has
Sure.
nothing to do with the security blanket of certainty.
Yeah, agreed. Agreed. You mentioned your book, though, The Wonder Switch, the difference between limiting your life and living your dream. What was the impetus behind you writing that book? What was your goals there?
Yeah. So I own and produce a conference each year called Story in Nashville. And we have, top Fortune 100 brands. We have creative leaders from Apple, Disney, Google, Nike, uh, Amazon, Meta, all these amazing companies. And they're sitting alongside of freelancers and solopreneurs and entrepreneurs and artists and creators and nonprofits, like everything from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to the Koch brothers Foundation, to professors from Harvard, right? And it is a collective conversation around the power that storytellers have to be the architects of culture.
Hmm.
And when we were researching with all of these storytellers, some of the top storytellers from around the world, we realized, it's not just stories, it's narrative, it's the power of narrative, because narrative is what drives human behavior. So then we started getting frustrated because we're like, but how come when we tell someone a new story, they're not willing to like embrace it? And then sometimes you tell someone a new story and they're like all in. What is
Right.
the difference between when stories make an actual difference at shifting behavior? And the answer is when there's an underlying narrative shift. So we're like, how do we create those narrative shifts that truly change the way that someone thinks or believes or behaves? And what we realize is that it's not just storytelling, it's about immersing someone in the experience of a new story, which led us back to the research out of UC Berkeley around positive awe states. So your brain has a vice-like grip on all of the narratives that you're clinging to. And these are narratives that you have already adopted as true, that are driving all the stories you tell yourself. And we all have multiple narratives. Again, we have political narratives, religious
Sure.
narratives, relational narratives. Even within our relational narrative, we have romantic narratives and parental narratives and sibling narratives, right? So many narratives. So if I can invite you into a new story, but I do that in an environment or an experience where you are curious, where you're experiencing awe and wonder, that vice grip that your brain has on the old stories, it's like someone comes and loosens it up.
Right.
And it's the time that your mind is most open to the possibility of what could be. A great example of this, if people listening to this were to go back and map out their life on a dry erase board or a piece of paper, and we mapped out the high points and the low points, really the defining moments of your life. Those defining moments were epiphanies, aha moments. Even think about the phrase aha, like aha, break it down. What is that? It's that's wonder.
Right.
Ha, that's curiosity being satisfied. Like, whoa, wait, I know how we're. So these aha moments, these are experiences of wonder that turn into us being curious enough to embrace a new narrative. So now a lot of my personal work alongside of the rest of our team at Astoria is at that intersection of on wonder and storytelling. I'm most interested in the way storytelling shifts underlying narratives because that's how we create huge changes and solve big problems in our world. But when we help people do that, we have to combine that storytelling in an immersive experience that stirs someone's awe and wonder because that changes the way they use their imagination. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I think that goes along with how you've described, like, the wonder switch is more of a dimmer, right?
Yes.
Where you toggle that, right, in terms of that major aha moment versus something that might be a little bit more, muted, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't even know if I answered your original question, like about the book. That's why I wrote the book is I got asked to write a book on that intersection of that research on positive awe states and
Mhm.
how we actually change things. And so that's the reason why the subtitle, you move from limiting your life to living your dream when you're willing to move from an old story or a now story to a new one.
Right.
But you can't do that without flipping that wonder switch back on. But the reality is, our wonder switch can be on in one of our narratives and off in another. One of our clients in one of our coaching programs, she was experiencing a lack of wonder and curiosity in the story she told herself in her relational narrative, but her wonder switch was completely on in her vocational narrative at work. And the reason why is her career has been extraordinary. Every time she comes up with a great idea, and leverages that, good things happen. But in her relational narrative, there was some trauma that had dimmed her wonder switch, and over time it had been turned off. And so there was a lack of curiosity and open mindedness relationally. Even though she was desperate to go on dates and get married, she wasn't pursuing that. She was trying to stay safe because the lack of wonder meant that she didn't have permission to believe in the possibility of a story going differently. Right.
Interesting.
So wonder switch on off. It can happen in different narratives, and yeah, it's less binary than just it's either you have it or you
Right.
don't.
Right.
And the reality is sometimes our wonder is very dim, and then sometimes our wonder gets wide awakened again.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Well, thank you. The book is amazing. I appreciate you sharing that with us. And Harris, we're all about joy on this instead of wonder. We're about joy on the Mitlin Money Mindset,
Love it.
which I think there are some parallels there as well. Anyway,
Absolutely.
so we ask each of our guests the same final question, which is, what did you do today that brought you joy and put you in the right mindset for success?
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. I am the question that you just asked me brings up one of my favorite quotes. And I want to make sure I'm actually just Googling it really quick because even though it's one of my favorites, sometimes I say it out of order
Okay.
and it's a perfect answer to your question. Um, the short answer to your question is what brought me joy was a practice of gratitude. And to bring that, the reason why I think you're right that this is all interwoven, this is G.K. Chesterton. He said, I would maintain that thanks are the highest form of thought and that gratitude is happiness doubled by wonder. That gratitude is happiness doubled by wonder. I know there are nuances between what happiness is and what joy is. Happiness can be tied to our circumstances. Joy can be universal. We can choose joy even when we don't feel the feeling of happy in that moment. Gratitude is happiness doubled by wonder. To me, the thing that can bring us the most joy sometimes is despite what's going on in our stories, to pause and go, what do I have to be grateful for? And that gratitude will always lead us back into that awe state where we can go, wow, I can choose joy despite my circumstances. I think that's pretty cool.
Great stuff. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for quoting that properly and making sure, because I think that it has had a great impact. I enjoyed that quote. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So listen, Harris, we're going to have all of yours and Astoria's information in the show notes. But if people want to learn more about you, learn more about the book, learn more about Astoria, what's the easiest and the best place for them to connect with you to do that?
Yeah, I would say go to your favorite bookseller or to Amazon, grab a copy of The Wonder Switch. That'd be a great place to start. Our company's website is astoria.com. It's Astoria with an I, so Istoria.com. Astoria is just ancient Greek for the word story. And so all of our work is all built around narrative intelligence and learning how to leverage the power of the Story OS in your work. If you want to learn more about my speaking, that's at harristhethird.com. So just Harris, I, like the Roman numeral 3, harristhethird.com. And then I respond to all DMs on the platform. So connect with me on LinkedIn, shoot me a DM. I will reply. You can email me through the website. I will personally reply. But I'd love to just come alongside of everyone, whether that's through the book or one of our live events like Story Conference, to see how we can help you grow in narrative intelligence and future proof your work. Because I think it's the most important capacity of our time.
I agree. And thank you so much for your time here today. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your story. I know I appreciate it. Our listeners will appreciate it. And enjoy your day.
Thank you. It was an honor to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I mean that.
I want to thank Harris III for being a guest on the Mitlin Money Mindset. Harris has an amazing skill set and is a must see in person. He can dazzle you with his illusions and wow you with his ability to convey stories. Harris knows the power of connecting with people, and he does this through his storytelling. I had the pleasure of seeing Harris speak, and it was quite the experience. He certainly can add value and help you win both in leadership and in life. Harris III and Istoria can be found across most social media platforms. All the contact information needed to find them can be found in the show notes.